Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
You know how we do it here? We get our hands dirty with original sources, and oh, today we're going way back.
Back in time. Buckle up.
That's right, to the beginning of Donald Trump's first term as president. Inauguration Day, early 2017. We're talking U.S.-China relations, folks, and let me tell you, things were, well, interesting, to say the least.
Interesting is a good word for it. Unpredictable. Maybe that too.
Yeah, unpredictable. And that's what makes this deep dive so juicy. We're going to be pouring over some excerpts from pasted text, really get into the nitty-gritty of the whole diplomatic dance between the U.S. and China during this unique moment in history.
Should be fascinating. I've been looking forward to this one.
Me too.
Ah.
Because, this was a period where a single handshake, a single word out of place, could have had ripple effects across the entire globe.
Absolutely. The stakes were, well, pretty high. And the sources we've got, they really paint a picture of the uncertainty in the air, especially when it came to Trump's foreign policy, how he was going to approach China especially.
Right. I mean, nobody knew what to expect. So let's just dive right in.
Yeah.
The big thing that jumps out right away is Trump's invitation to Xi Jinping to attend the inauguration. Never been done before. In the entire history of U.S.-China relations, no U.S. president had ever invited the Chinese leader to their inauguration. So help me out here. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, you've got to remember the historical context here. U.S. presidents, they've always been a little cautious about appearing, too chummy with Chinese leadership, especially on a day like Inauguration Day. It's all about symbolism, right? Legitimacy on the world stage, all that. Plus, Trump had spent his entire campaign railing against China, the whole trade war thing, national security threats. So this invitation, total curveball.
Yeah, for sure. Like he was ripping up the diplomatic rule book. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you can see it a couple of ways. Maybe it was a genuine attempt at a reset, a fresh start, a signal that he was willing to do things differently. Or maybe it was, well, a power play, a way to assert dominance right off the bat.
Interesting. So how did China react to this, let's call it a bold move? Did they see it as like a genuine olive branch? Or were they suspicious?
Well, their response was classic Chinese diplomacy. Measured, carefully calculated.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping didn't attend personally, which I think is significant. Like, he was keeping a little distance. But he did plan to send a high-ranking representative, and that itself was unusual. Usually it was just their ambassador in Washington.
Right, so not a total rejection, but not exactly a full embrace either.
Yeah.
Kind of keeping their options open, huh?
Exactly. Testing the waters. Now, the really intriguing part, choosing who to send. The sources mention a few potential candidates. Han Zheng, Wang Yi, and Kai-chi. Each one had a different level of influence, different closeness to Xi Jinping. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, yeah, because it becomes like this game of diplomatic chess. Each piece you move sends a different message. So break it down for us. Who were these guys, and what would their presence have signified?
Right. Like Han Zheng, he represented, I'd say, a more traditional, cautious approach to foreign policy. Wang Yi, he was the foreign minister, so sending him might have signaled a focus on diplomacy, negotiation. But then you have Kai-chi. He was a close confidant of Xi Jinping, like inner circle. Sending him would have been a huge deal.
Yeah, I can see how that would carry a lot of weight. It's like you're sending your most trusted advisor, so you must be serious about this.
Exactly. And the sources mention that Trump's advisors were really pushing for Kai-chi. They thought he'd be the most impactful because of his direct line to Xi Jinping. It shows they were already trying to figure out the inner workings of Chinese politics, who held the real power,
Wow. Okay, so sending someone at that level, that was already a departure from the usual protocol.
Oh,
right?
yeah, definitely. And normally, like I said, it was just the ambassador. So this whole thing really highlights how unique the situation was. Both sides were trying to figure out a new way of doing things, trying to establish a new dynamic.
It's like they were speaking two different languages, trying to find some common ground. And you've got Trump, this wild card, shaking things up from day one.
And that's the thing, right? It adds another layer of complexity. I mean, what was Xi Jinping really thinking? One of our sources, Dennis Wilder, former White House China advisor, he suggests that maybe Xi just thought Trump was too unpredictable, too risky to meet with in person at the inauguration.
That's interesting. So, like, he didn't want to risk a diplomatic faux pas or be seen as endorsing Trump too early, especially with all the uncertainty around his policies.
Right. I mean, think about it. You're the leader of China. You're watching this new president who's been saying some pretty harsh things about your country, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this guy for real? Is he going to follow through on these threats? Or is this all just bluster?
Makes sense. So you have all this, the uncertainty, the unconventional moves, but then the sources also point out that there were some areas where both sides were actually willing to cooperate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Beneath all the posturing and the uncertainty, there was still this recognition that they needed to work together on some things, like cybercrime, for example. That was a big one. And trade with Taiwan. And then, of course, there was the whole Russia situation.
Right, because they both had, well, complicated relationships with Russia at the time.
Exactly. So even though there was this underlying tension, this rivalry, they still saw the need to cooperate on certain issues, things that were in their mutual interest. It's kind of a recurring theme in U.S.-China relations, I'd say. Even when things are tense, they still find ways to work together when they need to.
So just to kind of sum things up, I guess what we're seeing here is that Trump's inauguration was, well, it was a turning point, a weird, kind of bewildering turning point, an unprecedented invitation, a super calculated response, and like you said, hints of cooperation peeking through all the uncertainty.
It was the beginning of a new chapter, that's for sure. And I think it raises a really important question. Did these early interactions, this whole diplomatic dance they were doing, did that set the stage for the even more complex relationship between the U.S. and China that we see today?
Whoa, yeah, that's a big question. And honestly, I don't know if we have the answer, but it's definitely something to think about, right?
Absolutely. And that's what makes studying history so fascinating. We're always looking for these connections, these patterns, trying to understand how events from the past shape the world we live in today.
Well said. And, as always, we've just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given you all a new perspective on the early days of the Trump presidency and the whole, let's just say, intricate dance of U.S.-China relations.
It's a dance that's still going on, too, and it's one we all need to pay attention to.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging deeper.
See you all next time.
Bye for now.